Thanks a lot for joining us. I'm Shivani Gupta. I'm a journalist for 15 years now and co-author of Sania Mirza's autobiography, Ace Against All. I'm joined by Imran Mirza, who is, of course, the father, coach, and mentor of Sania Mirza, who's achieved the world #1 ranking in women's doubles. And he's the co-author of the book as well. And together we worked hard to bring Sania's story as true to as possible to her, in her own words, to the audiences.
Hi.
Imran, it's nice to be talking to you. It's been exactly 5 years since the book was released. And it's been, of course, 20 years since you've been mentoring Sania and her career since she was very, very young.
Let me correct you. It's been 29 years since she started.
29 years.
Yeah.
I should say 30 years. So virtually all of your, parenthood life and, of course, all of Sania's life has gone in picking up the tennis racket and, making her way through the big bag world of tennis. So first up, let me begin by asking you, how do you look back at everything?
Well, it has been a dream come true as far as the last 30 years of my life are concerned, because sport has always been my life, and it has been our family's life, and for a few generations now. We are a sporting family. We have produced a few international cricketers, some first-class cricketers. It was more of a cricketing family, but love for sport was always there. My father was more keen into hockey, and Sania is probably the first professional tennis player that we managed to produce. So for someone who loves sport and whose life has revolved around sport, I think having a daughter who has achieved everything that I could have dreamed of as far as tennis is concerned is very gratifying. And it's really been a dream come true, even though there has been a lot of struggle, a lot of hard work. There were times when we almost thought that we might have bungled by getting into this profession. But at the end of the day, I think we are very, very satisfied with what we achieved.
Why do you say that you felt like there was a time when you would have bungled getting into this sport?
I think, Shivani, I think one of the problems we had was that Sania was probably the first female sporting icon that broke onto the Indian scene. And there were a lot of problems that happened because of that. Someone who's a pioneer in a field generally ends up facing a lot more problems than someone who follows. And I think the media itself created quite a few problems for us at that point of time, because they themselves, I think, the television media was just developing at that point of time. And they probably didn't know how to handle a sporting icon who happened to be a woman, who happened to be good looking, who happened to know how to speak, and who also performed. So I think because of that, a lot of controversies were created out of thin air, and we had to negotiate them. And that wasn't a very happy thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. But let me, just try and talk about the book here. First of all, let me mention that it was a pleasure, working with both of you on the book. And through that, I learned a lot myself, and just what it takes to go through the rigors of bringing up an athlete, that too in a very, very professional and cutthroat sport like tennis from India, where, tennis wasn't the biggest sport that you could pick up. So I want to begin also by asking you, what was the motivation behind penning down her story, even as her career was actually ongoing? Usually people do that once they've retired and, they've hung up their boots. But Sania actually did it at a time when, she was at the peak of her career at that time.
Well, Shivani, there were a few reasons why we wanted to write the book, and particularly at that point of time. I think the first was that we felt that due to the controversies that were happening every other day in Sania's life and career, some of her achievements, which were major as far as we were concerned, were going into the background. And we thought that we needed to firstly enumerate all her achievements under one cover, so that for posterity, I think that was important for us, so that people would remember her more for her achievements rather than for the controversy that seemed to be being created every now and then. That was point number one. Secondly, I think we wanted to provide some kind of a roadmap for the next generation of tennis players and their families and their support staff, so that in the coming years, the work we had put in, the experience that we had gained would be beneficial to them in future. That was the point number two. But also, I think very importantly, we wanted to give Sania's point of view for all the controversies that she had faced. Because whenever she spoke to the media, it was always the media's point of view that came across in the articles that were finally printed and published. It was never what Sania had said. And here, firsthand, we thought we had an opportunity to put across Sania's point of view and the family's point of view, so that in future people would know exactly. I don't think we need to say anything more apart from what we've said about those controversies in this book.
Yes.
Having said this, I think what I tried to do was to pick my words very, very carefully to describe Sania's thoughts rather than my thoughts or anybody else's thoughts. And I think that's what we discussed while we were writing ourselves, that it should always remain Sania Mirza's book, not a Shivani Gupta or Imran Mirza's book. And I think we succeeded to a great extent.
It is her book, it is her story at the end of the day, and we are just facilitators of that story. And quite a remarkable story it has been. As you very rightly said, that, now maybe it may seem like, not that extraordinary, but even at the time when it was happening, starting from a Wimbledon juniors title, for example, it was just an extraordinary story. And that is why perhaps many in India, as much love and adulation that Sania has received over the years, but also not always fully able to grasp what was happening with the young athlete at that time. The word that sticks out for me and the experience that sticks out for me from writing the book, Imran, is family. And I think what I have understood very deeply is, just as they say, it takes a village to raise a child, it does take a village and more to raise an athlete. And I think the family ethos that went behind making Sania Mirza's career, could you just elaborate on that? How the family came together at various points in time to make this happen?
Well, like we mentioned in the book, we happened to be watching Wimbledon one day, way back when Sania was probably, I think, 5 or 6 years old, and just out of the blue, I said to my wife and some relations sitting out there in Bangalore in our home out there, and I said, wouldn't it be great if someday Sania also plays on centre court at Wimbledon? And everyone there in the room laughed, except my wife, who suddenly went teary-eyed, literally, and said, if I ever have a chance to do that, I'll give my life for that. And I think she really did that. And I think I'm really grateful for the support I got from my wife and from the rest of the family, my younger daughter as well. So it was something that we all believed in. It was something that we had a passion for. And that's something that I keep on reiterating when I go to the academy and meet some of the parents of upcoming youngsters. I say there needs to be a wild passion to achieve something, to enjoy the game, to love the sport. It can never be done if you're doing it only for the money or for the fame or for anything else in the world. But you have to have a great passion for it, and you have to believe in it together. And I think that's the only way. There's no way that a player in tennis can come up without parental support. And at the same time, I think I need to warn you that just having support isn't good enough. It needs to be the right kind of support, and that's where we bungle a little bit. And that's where I feel I can be of help to the next generation of parents in guiding them and in helping them, because we've seen it all in the last 29 or 30 years.
Because every parent would believe their kid has talent, but how do you differentiate if that talent is good enough to continue to struggle and make it big in any sport? Could you share your tips on that?
Yeah, I think, I was fortunate that I came from a sporting background, and I thought I had a keen eye as far as understanding sport was concerned, whether it was cricket or tennis. I had played more of cricket, but I also played tennis, and I followed a lot. I've also been a bit of a small-time editor of a sports magazine, so I have analyzed the way players have played from a very young age. So I believe I had some special talent in doing that. Everyone may not have that. So if you don't have that, you need to get guidance from professionals who do have that talent, and then picking the right people to guide you is important. So, there's something that I can share, which I shared with Leander Pace's father as well, and Mahesh Bhupati's father. I think that's something that we follow, that it's very difficult to decide at the age of 6 or 7, when a child is 6 or 7, that they're going to be professional tennis players. Nobody can guarantee you that. There are too many ifs and buts, and you need to be very fortunate to get out there. So you always need to keep one foot in your educational stuff, so that, in case at some point of time you realize that you're not going to make it in professional sport, you can always get back into education. And that's exactly what Leander Pace's father said. He said, you can only decide whether they can turn professional at around 16, 17, 18. And by then, if you have not studied at all, you're going to end up a loser if you can't make it professionally. And Mahesh Bhupati's father said the same thing. And we did exactly the same thing with Sania. that every 6 months or 1 year, we would reassess how the situation was, how she was progressing, whether she had a chance or not. And it was only around, I think, when she was about 13, 12 or 13, when we thought that she had it in her, and we had a chance to make a big impact in international tennis. So that's, I think, a very important thing to note, that you need to keep one foot in your educational background.
Yes. You know, I would say that becoming an athlete is like being an entrepreneur. Everybody sees the successes, but what people don't realize is that 95% of all startups fail. So,
Yes, exactly, Shivani. The thing is that though Sania was succeeded in a big way, there were at least 100 tennis players who failed along the way, and they lost out a lot in terms of education, in terms of finances. So even the money that you're putting in, you have to be very careful how much money, because this money that you put in never comes back. So you have to be very, 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 very careful in how you invest your money in the player, in the sport.
So you would say that you have to be pragmatic at the end of the day. As much passion as you may have, you also need pragmatic.
Absolutely. The thing is that you could play tennis for life. You could play whatever sport you love for life, but it need not necessarily be as a profession. So that is something that you need to accept. Like in tennis, there are alternatives. If at the age of 16, 17, you realize you're not cut out for professional tennis, you can always get a scholarship to go abroad and study. On the basis of your tennis ranking of whatever 30, 40 in the country or whatever in the juniors. So that is a very good option to take in case you can't make it professionally, because only 1 out of millions is going to make it successfully at the professional level. And one needs to have a backup plan. And I think this is a very good backup plan. And you need to be, like I keep on reiterating, education has to be in your focus.
You know, and this is coming from someone who's built the career of one of the most famous, most decorated Indian athletes of all time. And perhaps this will strike a chord with other parents as well, because otherwise we only hear that you just have to go for it, but you always do need to have a backup plan too. As I was saying, sports is a big gamble, and while you may have passion and everything, I do understand the apprehension that many parents would have of only pursuing sport, not having an education, backup.
Yes, I can add over there that Shivani, when Sania was, I think, about 17, and that's when there was a choice. She had already started college and completed a year at the university level. And then the choice was between either giving the exams or playing Wimbledon. And that's when she opted for Wimbledon, because she thought that really had that professionally she could do something in tennis. So you can wait for that time, and she still had a choice at that point of time. If she wanted, she could have got back into academics, but she preferred to go into sport, and it turned out to be the right decision.
Yes. No, like I said, we only see the successes. We don't see that so many people have tried and failed. So therefore, it is a very risky call to take in your lives, and a very, very risky call for parents especially to take, because they are always worried about the future of their kids. The other thing that those who are interested in learning from Sania's experience would find in the book, Imran, are for me, what stands out also, apart from her achievements on the court, is off the court, how all of you guys hustled so many times. I remember particularly where we mentioned about the trips you would make in your car to hundreds of kilometers to go to tournaments, and how you planned those tournaments. And sometimes you had very risky experiences on the road as well. So share a little bit more about that, those experiences that stand out with you.
When you look back, I feel that it has been a tough road. But while we were doing it, the passion that we had and the love that we had for tennis and for trying to achieve something that nobody had achieved from India, that kept us going. And we really didn't feel any kind of pressure while we were doing it. Now, when I think back, I said, how the hell did I do it? So, driving away in a jalopy of a car, doing thousands of miles, traveling the country to play the tournaments, only because it was cheaper traveling in a second-hand car, because the day you lost, you could leave the hotel and go to the next tournament. That's the only reason why we were traveling by car, because the train bookings were never available at short notice, and flights were too expensive for us to afford. So yeah, we had a great time as a family. 4 of us. Anam was very, very young, and she had someone to take care of her, a caretaker, and she would be in the room while the 3 of us would be on the courts, and in the evening we would get back and enjoy. I had had a very good family time. I think that's a bonding that has stayed, and that's something that we really cherish even today. The kind of bonding that we have, even though they are mature adults now, the kids. And it was great fun. I think we were young enough to enjoy those kind of adventurous escapades that we had. And the only thought that we had was we had to do what needed to be done. And I think that I come back to the fact that you need to have that kind of passion for the sport so that you don't mind doing anything that it takes. We never knew what it was going to take. We never knew whether the car would break down, and we didn't have enough money probably to, we didn't even think of that, because we were almost in a trance trying to achieve something that nobody else had achieved in the country. And for me, that is the kind of craziness or madness that you need to achieve something big.
Financially speaking, sports is a very expensive affair. Especially picking up a sport like tennis. If you want to play professionally, one day you have to travel all around the world, and it's very much a solo affair. Like, it's not really a team sport. You have to manage your expenses, your trips, etc. All of virtually on your own. There's not that much support even today as far as tennis players are concerned. I remember one episode where Nasima auntie would stand for hours at the railway station counter to try and get those discounts for your tickets that Sania was eligible for. So you've been through struggles. People may look at you and your family today and say, they were well-to-do and that's why they could manage to do so. Could you share a little bit of the financial worries and questions that you had to deal with?
When Sania was a junior player, the returns in money are zero as far as the prize money is concerned, because the prize money only starts when you turn professional. And you need to play at least about 4 or 5 years at the junior level internationally to be able to compete, because coming from India, you don't find that kind of competition over here. Someone like Venus or Serena Williams straight away headed into women's tennis without even playing the juniors. That's because the level they were hitting, the level of players they were practicing with was good enough for them to move into the professional circuit very easily. But for an Indian to start from here, we need to learn along the way when they're playing the juniors, and there's no money in the juniors. It's you only need to spend. And our budget at that point of time was about 50 lakhs per year. And I was earning, I think, about 10,000 rupees a month. So somehow it didn't quite add up. And we needed to do all kinds of things to raise the kind of finances from sponsors or potential sponsors, or we got help a little bit from the state. But at the end of the day, still, it's, whatever money you're earning, whatever money you are managing to raise goes into tennis, and you're still short of it. My idea of, if we were to promote tennis in our country, I really feel, if you've been to a Grand Slam, you've been to Wimbledon, you've been to some of the other Grand Slams as well, Shivani, and you will understand exactly how proud one feels when an Indian is represented on a stage as big as that. It's huge. Like, the only thing that can probably go higher than that is the Olympics. The Grand Slam stage is huge. So it's a great honor for a country to be represented there. And I think the state would do well to maybe, for an individual, putting in 50 lakhs a year is a lot of money. But for a government to put in, say, 50 lakhs a year on say 10 different players, which would amount to about 5 crores a year, and then you have a chance of someone emerging out of that system in the next, say, 5 or 7, 10 years. I think that's something we could invest in, and that's something we could convince the state to do. Because for an individual, no doubt, it's a very tough thing. You might have the talent, but without the kind of financial support and also having the right kind of family life, it's virtually impossible to create a
Absolutely. So are there any anecdotes? This is something I keep asking you and Sania over the years. Are there any more anecdotes that you held back on that you would like to share today that are not there in the book?
Well, one was, I think, this was happened in, I think, 2005, and Sania was playing at Forest Hills. That's where US Open used to be played before it moved to Flushing Meadows. And there was a tournament a week before the US Open 2005, and Sania went in to play. And there's this tradition of having flags of all the countries that are represented in that tournament. And the Indian flag on that day in Sania's court happened to be flying upside down. And immediately Sania noted that and went and complained. And the organizers were a little bit finicky about that. They said, no, but we don't have time to say, you just start off the tournament, and we don't have the ladder to change it right now. We do it as and when we can. But Sania just refused, and the match was delayed by almost about 45 minutes until they could find a ladder and do that. And that was something that she was only 18 at that point of time. And it struck me that, here was a young girl representing the country and feeling that unless the flag was flown in the right manner, she is not going to go ahead, however big the tournament may be and whoever the organizers may be. This was actually reported there was just one reporter from an Urdu newspaper who happened to be there at that point of time, and he reported it in his newspaper from Hyderabad. But it never got the kind of mileage that probably something that the flag controversy that happened a few years later. That's the kind of mileage that got. So that was one incident that stays with me. Another thing is Shivani. I don't think you even know about this, but this happened when Sania was probably 10 years old. And like you said, we had managed to get discounted tickets for train going in a second-class sleeper, traveling from Hyderabad to Delhi for the nationals. I think that's the first time Sania was playing nationals. And just then, a beggar happened to get into the train and begged for money, and I felt really bad about it. And I quickly pulled out a 10 rupee note and handed it over to him. And believe me, at that point, this is about 25 years ago, 10 rupees was also a sizable amount for me, considering that we were trying to save as much money as we could. And Sania just looked at me imploringly and said, Baba, give him 100. And I couldn't say no to her. I pulled out 100, was big time for me. And I did pull it out and give it to him. But that's the kind of charity, the feeling for charity that Sania has developed even today. You would have seen her, work for during the difficult times that our country went to recently, and to try and raise funds and try and help others. And I think I'm very proud of that. But it's something that started off right then when she was a 10-year-old.
Tell me one thing. What do you think made Sania successful in dealing with all the mental pressures that come with being a professional athlete, both on court and off court?
Well, one thing was that she's fortunate to have come from a sporting background. We were a sporting family. We have, like I said, produced a few international cricketers. We have produced some first-class cricketers. And sport was very important for us. So I think the attitude towards sport is very important. That can only come from years or a few generations of people being interested and understanding sport. So in that sense, I think she had the perfect background to make it, to understand that victories and defeats were all part of the game. Ups and downs are all part of life. And that's the way we've always treated sport. Something to learn from. It's not necessary that you become a professional tennis player. Not everyone is lucky enough or fortunate enough to be earning money doing what they love to do. But sport is something that's so important to us. And the one thing that she was always taught was that, you need to handle victories and defeats and the highs and lows of international sport with a lot of decorum and with a lot of taste. And that's I think, something that she learned. But also, I think as far as handling pressures were concerned, firstly, as a husband and wife team, we decided that we would try and take the pressure off. The pressure of winning was never there because as parents, that's something that kids always feel pressure from the parents if they lose. They don't care what the world thinks about them, but it's always what the parents. And we always had a smile when she lost. We always had a smile when the tournament ended, whether it was in success or defeat. The only thing we demanded from her was that she gave her best. And that I think she did at most times. And the only time I think I've been a little bit stern with her when she was a junior was when I thought she had not given her best shot. And that was the only thing that concerned us. Winning and losing were really not that critical. We always used losses to learn from them and to help her improve in future. And I think that kind of spirit stayed with her, that she grew up with this kind of feeling.
Once you become used to winning, like once you're better than the rest by a certain mile and you become used to winning, then it does become very difficult to lose, isn't it?
It is. But I think that's where the support team comes in. All said and done, it's a game. That's how you need to treat it as. Wins and losses. No sportsman in the world, whether it's a Roger Federer or a Don Bradman, would be absolutely 110% with what they've achieved in sport. Don Bradman would have said, instead of 99.94, I wish I had 100 average. So the greatest cricketer in the world would have felt that. Or Roger Federer would have felt that, instead of 20, I could have won 25 Grand Slams. So these are things that, this is part of sport. you have to be able to handle these kind of things where it's not a Bollywood film where everything happens in a hunky-dory manner. This is sport where, you need to handle victories and defeats in a very, very mature manner. And that's one thing that sport gives you. I think I've talked to you a lot about this, about what I consider sport to be. And it's not only about turning professional or being number one in the world. Yes, if you have the potential, you do need to do that. And the one thing that I think that we kept on harping on with Sania was that we wanted her to be the best she could be, not necessarily the best in the world. She happened to be best in the world in women's doubles. That was great. But if she hadn't, and she had maybe played even at the national level or even at the state level, if that was a capacity, we would have been satisfied with it, because we enjoyed every stroke that she hit on the tennis court. We enjoyed every struggle that went with it. We enjoyed the little under 10 trophies that she won. We enjoyed the under 14 juniors when she dominated the nationals. So these are things. This is an attitude that can come only from generations of being in sport. It's very difficult to teach that to people who have just got into sport, and that's what I've struggled with when I speak to a lot of parents at the academy, who are very, very anxious about achieving success in the first 6 months or 1 year of their starting tennis. That's something one thing I keep on telling them is that it takes 10 years of playing tennis to be able to decide whether they have a chance or not. And then it probably takes another 5 or 6 years, even if they have a chance to make it to the professional level. So it's a tough road. It's a long road. And one has to be, very patient about it and enjoy the whole process.
But off the court pressures that Sania has dealt with, perhaps, the most pressure that any young athlete has dealt with in India at that time, because of the breakthrough star that Sania was, in a new sport and as a female athlete. One thing that stands out for me, Imran, is that, when all of you guys get together as a family, no matter what is happening outside the door, inside it's all very jovial. You have a sense of humor about what's playing out, even if it's hurtful at some times, and you can joke about it. And I think that, would you say, has also helped you get through some tough moments in which Sania felt very down at times?
100%. I think as a family, you would have noted that we laugh a lot. We laugh at crazy things. We create all kinds of humor where there's not. The toughest of situations, we try and find humor in that. And I think that actually, takes the pressure away. At least for me, it does. And I'm sure it does for others who are around us as well. But that's something that is very important to us, to face life. And that's part of facing losses and defeats and ups and downs in a mature manner, by laughing at stuff that normally would be hurtful to you. I think that has given us a great getaway and helped Sania along. Also, while Sania was facing some of those controversies, where Sania and Naseema and I, we decided between ourselves that we would try and keep her away from that as far as possible, form a cocoon around her. So even though there were people around speaking about all that stuff, we tried to see that it did not reach her in its entirety. And I think we succeeded to some extent, even though it was not possible to do it completely, because there was so much stuff going on in that time of time. Anything that Sania did or said was making headlines and big news. And so it has its negativities there. That was the time when I felt that maybe we had bungled, because I felt that Sania was, when it finally started getting to her, and it started getting to my wife as well. And I felt that maybe we had bungled by getting into a profession like tennis in India. But when I look back today, yes, I think those were also learning processes for us, and we got out of it. We were better human beings with stronger characters when we came out of it.
Absolutely. I remember this very funny episode which we mentioned in the book as well, when Shoaib was coming to Hyderabad, and just to hide that, there was a whole plan that was devised so that the media doesn't get close to him. And one of Sania's uncles actually jumped onto his cricket kit bag to kind of hide the fact that Shoaib was there in Hyderabad. Yeah. So I find that no matter what the situation, you and your extended family always had the good mood and the right attitude towards it.
Yeah, you're right about that, Shivani. You seem to have gotten under the skin of our families. That's exactly what we do. We joke a lot, we laugh a lot, and while we are working, we work a lot. We work very seriously, but in all other stuff, we take life easy and enjoy the family life. We enjoy the rest of things that come with a smile.
So do you sometimes sit down and look back at some things that have happened? What's the thing you laugh about most these days when you look back?
Uh, Actually, the wedding time, Sanya's wedding time, that was probably the most stressful time. And yet some crazy things happened, like getting, I think we mentioned this in the book as well. We needed to get Shoaib out of our house the day before the wedding, because he and his family had nowhere else to stay. They were staying with us. And the media was making all kinds of accusations against them and us. And we had to get him out of the house. And that happened at around midnight. We thought that's the time when the 200 journalists who were standing or stationed outside our house, that's when we thought they would be a little tired and they wouldn't be able to understand what the heck was going on. And so we got there was a small gate in our house. We got a car to go and stand there. Then one of my friends went out onto the road where all the media people were there and started screaming in the phone. So that just to scare off the media, and they all, just shifted off a little bit further away, thinking that there's something serious going on. And here's a man who seems to be really, really angry. And while that was going on, Shoaib was moved into the car and then whisked away into the hotel. So these were things that were serious at that time. But when you look back, they are amazingly funny.
Yes, and there are many such episodes that have been described in the book. The early years, I think people can perhaps gain a lot more from, because everything else has happened in the media glare, what she has achieved, even some of the controversies. But I think the part before she became a star, and also the behind the scenes of when all of this was happening, from the family's point of view, from Sanya's point of view, those are some things that are only there in this book. But let me come back to managing a top athlete. Would you say there is a difference, Imran, in managing a female athlete and a male athlete?
There's a vast difference, and I think, Shivani, that's the reason why someone who succeeded as a coach with a woman will rarely do well as a coach of a man. I think the biggest thing that one needs to understand with a woman is the emotions that she goes through and the emotions she needs to handle. You look at it in an objective manner. When you're playing a rally, within a matter of seconds, there is change of emotion. There is initially there's excitement that you're going to win the point. Then there's despair because you feel you're not going to reach the ball, and then there's relief because you managed to put the ball back. So these are the kind of emotions that pass through you within a few seconds while the rally is on. And a woman really struggles handling those emotions, and that's something that you need to be very sensitive about when you're coaching a woman.
But why do you say that a woman struggles with it but a man doesn't?
Because I feel the way they handle even opponents, like if a woman has been drawn to play another player who might be a casual friend of theirs, for the next 24 hours they wouldn't even like to look at them. They are looking at them like as serious enemies, literally, even though it's just a tennis match. Whereas two guys who might be playing a match the next day, but they would be drinking at night together and joking together, and then play the match, maybe swear at each other during the match, and then come out and then be great friends again. So that's the difference between when you're even coaching a woman, you have to time yourself perfectly. And that's the advantage I had being a father. I could be there 24 hours with her, and I could time myself to speak to her about the match when I felt she was ready to learn from it. Because there's no point with a guy, if he lost a match and I felt he had not played, immediately I could go and speak to that person about it and tell him, this is exactly what you've done. Come out of the court. You need to straighten these things out. And he would accept that, and about 15 minutes he would be fine with it. But for a woman, there have been times when I have not spoken about a problematic match till we were having breakfast about 2 days down the road, because that's the only time when I felt she was ready to understand exactly what happens. So you have to be very careful about how you time yourself speaking about technique or what you needed to do in the match that you may have lost or not done properly. So these are things that I think are very, very different.
I also want to ask you, at the time when we were writing the book, Sania was having some of her best years in the doubles format. She had great partnerships with the likes of Cara Black, and then, of course, the super partnership that she built with Martina Hingis, for example, and they were famous as Santina. So she had a great run. and she was going into the 2016 Olympics, where Rohan and Sania came very close as well to a medal podium finish. So a lot was happening, and I wonder. The other day I was talking to Sania before these Olympics in Tokyo, and we were talking about how we've always wondered whether we'll have to supplement the books with everything that has happened since, because a lot has happened since. And she's made a comeback after pregnancy. She's again trying to be on the court and amongst the top in the world. So she's still doing the grind. But I want to ask you, what stands out for you of those years? The glorious years on the doubles circuit that Sania had, and some of the great partnerships that will be remembered for a very long time.
Well, certainly the greatest partnership was with Martina Hingis, and the way it came about was, I think very providential, because Sania was playing with Sue Wei at that point of time, who had been a former world number one, and Sania was very close to getting to the number one spot, and Sue Wei for some reason felt pressured that she was not able to deliver for Sania, and she came and openly said that to her, that I'm feeling the pressure. And also, both of them were forehand court players, and that made a difference. Sue Wei was playing on the backhand side; she wasn't able to deliver the way she felt she could. And she offered Sania that I can help you find another partner, because I really feel I'm not doing justice to you. Mm-hmm. And that's when in Dubai they lost early, and Sania spoke to Martina, who was also struggling a little bit with Flavia Panetta at that point of time, who was a partner. Mm-hmm. And they decided that they'd wait till Doha, which was the next week, and then decide whether they should get together. Well, as it transpired, Sue Wei and Sania decided that this was going to be their last tournament. So Sania said, I'll play the backhand court and you play forehand. Let's see as a change. Anyway, this is going to be the last tournament we're going to play. As luck would have it, they reached the final over there. And suddenly everything seemed to have changed, because even Sue Wei was a little bit, apprehensive what's going to happen now that we are in the final. Do we continue? And Sania also felt that, I've played pretty decently on the backhand side. If I can make a final here, I think I can do better with a little bit more practice. And Martina herself thought that now that she's made the final, they probably won't play together. And she didn't expect that Sania would come to her. And that's when I was back home in India, and Sania called me that evening and said, what do you think I should do? Because I have to answer Martina tomorrow and decide what we need to do, because I feel I can do pretty well on the backhand side. Like, I reached the final against some of the best competitors that I can find. And I can only improve with that. So I spent the whole night, Shivani, looking at videos of matches of Martina, Sue Wei, and Sania, in playing with different partners. And I didn't sleep the whole night. And the next morning I said, Sania, I feel you can do pretty well on playing backhand court. But if you want to become world number one, I think Martina will be your right choice. Because firstly, she's a backhand court player, and I think she'll suit you. So that's when we decided to go with her. That's how the partnership started, Mm-hmm. And then the first tournament was in Indian Wells, and followed by Miami, and they happened to win both of those. And that's when I started. Initially I was very reluctant about how I would be speaking and trying to coach someone who's been a legend. She's been a legend since years and years, and one of the greatest women's tennis players that
Martina.
Absolutely. Yeah, but I found, very pleasantly surprised that, she was very amenable to be coached. She was very, very enthusiastic about discussing her game. And then we formed a terrific relationship with her. I think finally it used to be her who would call me on court even before Sania did, because she loved chatting on court and trying. And I found it really invigorating, because I felt that when you explain something to her, she would debate with you. And only if she was convinced about it, she would try it out. But she was always willing to try. And that is something that I learned from a legend like her, that, that's something you need to keep learning constantly. There was a time when you won't believe it. She even called me onto the court when they were 6-love up. And I said, yes, what's the problem? I think you're playing fantastically. And she said, no, I know we're playing well. I was just feeling bored. So, I wanted to chat. So that's the kind of relationship we ended up having with her. And it was wonderful for the next 1.5 years. She and her agent David and Sania and I made a great foursome, whether it was on court, off court. And we had a wonderful relationship, and it worked out brilliantly. And there were two champions who refused to let go in difficult times. That's something that I thought was in common between Martina and Sania. They're very, very, they would refuse to accept defeat. They would always believe they could turn things around. And I think that's the stuff champions are made of. And that was a learning process for me as well. And I think I cherish those 18 months that we had together as Santina. Apart from this,
Yeah.
I've also Shivani, I've also had the opportunity of working with 3 other world number ones. There was Cara Black, with whom Sania partnered. So I was also coaching with her briefly, and everyone is so different. That's something that I take away from my stints as coaches with them. Like Cara was someone who was brilliant at volleys, probably one of the best volleyers the game has ever seen, and yet she needed the confidence to be told before matches that she is the best in the world, and that's all you needed to do, just convince her that she's the best. Whereas Martina and Sania were both extremely confident about their achievements could be, whereas Cara was just someone who needed to be goaded on and told that you are the best, just go and deliver, and she would. So there's a vast difference in temperaments, and I also had the opportunity to work with Liesl Huber. She was also another world number one, another one of the greats of doubles women's tennis. And I think she was a coach's delight, because if you told her to play on someone's forehand, she wouldn't let go of that. She would do exactly that until you told her to stop. So she had complete faith in what the coach was saying. So that was completely different to the way Martina worked. Like, she would debate with you, and only if she was convinced she would work out the way you had insisted. So, and the 5th person I worked with was Barbara Strichkova, who was actually ranked around 25 or 30 when Sania joined after she split with Martina. And here was someone who was who looked like an absolute spoiled brat on the court when you saw her, screaming at herself, screaming at the crowd, screaming. And yet when you went in and coached her, she was very, very sensitive and very, very amenable to be coached. And she understood that, and she would give herself a pat on the back and say, why didn't I think of this earlier? So, these are different. They were all world number ones, but each had a different temperament. And these are things that I learned from. And these are things that nobody could have taught me. And I think this is what has made me richer in experience as far as tennis coaching is concerned.
Yes, absolutely. I just want to, because we are discussing this in the aftermath of the Olympics that have happened, there's a conversation around sports and how to nurture athletes to play at the world's biggest stage. And since you've had great experience in mentoring Sania and, looking at the world of tennis from very close up, I just want to ask you, what would your advice overall be to parents who would want their children to play sports?
I think the first thing is dream big, hope for the best, but plan to face the worst. I think that would be good advice, because, you have to have a backup plan as well. This sport, international sport, is not something anybody can guarantee, but you still have to give your all into it. That's the only way you will make it. So unless you dream big, you're never going to try to achieve what you're capable of doing. You have to hope for the best. If you're not positive enough, you're never going to make it. And yet you have to plan in case things don't work out. That is point number one. You also need to understand, as someone in sport, that victory and defeat are both part of the game, and you need to be able to take the highs and lows of sport as you need to take it in life. That's another very important lesson I've learned and try to imbibe into Sania, and that's something I would keep on reiterating with the parents of players who come to my academy. Never give up. That's one thing we have never done in 29 years. We've continued on. When we thought that we had a chance, we would keep trying even when things didn't really work out. And another thing was which I still do after 29 years, I never stop learning, because I'm still learning as far as tennis is concerned. I'm still learning how to nurture a tennis player. I don't think I know everything. I don't think I can guarantee that the next player I take out would be as good as Sania. There were many things that fell into place, and we are fortunate in that sense. As a father, and a coach, I think it was a very tough balancing act for me, because it was a 24-hour job where the father's job ended. That's when the coach's job started off. There were emotions I felt as a father, and yet I couldn't say those things because as a coach I had to think differently. So these are things I need to do, being a coach and a parent together. But finally, I'll tell you one thing, Shivani, that I felt where I stayed ahead of the rest of the competition as far as coaching went. Even the foreign competition, was that I believe that different races have different aptitudes and different talents. If it is, I feel the Europeans have great legs, I feel the Indians have great hands and skills in their hands. I feel that the Chinese have great precision. So these are traits that can help you, and you need to use in your sport, whatever sport that may be. In tennis, I felt that I would always modify the European brand of coaching to suit the Indian body. And that's where I think I succeed. This is something that people do not understand, how important that is. For instance, what is taught in Europe as a forehand is not the forehand I would teach an Indian, because we have different mechanics as far as our hand movement and hand coordination are concerned. The bone joints are concerned. They are much more looser. The movement. You can have an Azharuddin or a VVS Lakshman doing that brilliant work with their wrists only because they have those kind of wrists. You can't teach those kind of things. We have those brilliant spinners. We had in my time like Prasanna Bedi and Chandrasekhar, because of the little wrists they have, the joints they have. And I think that's where I have succeeded in molding Sania's coaching after having learned from the West and molded it into what suited the Indian body most. And I think that's very, very important. I think that would be important in any sport as well.
It's a very, we're almost coming to the end of our session. So I just want to remind everyone that it's been 5 years since Sania's book. It's an enduring story. It continues to be a very enduring story, a very educating story of, what it takes to really succeed in a sport as cutthroat as tennis, as lonely as tennis, and as professional as tennis. And there are many, many stories from her younger years to even later years to learn from. But she is at a very critical stage of her career now, coming back after motherhood. How long do you think she has?
She has as long as she wants to play, I feel. It's going to take, she is fit. The thing is, the priorities change. And I don't know how much they have changed. She's an individual, and I don't get into her private life. You know how we deal in our family, Shivani. And I feel that it's up to her. If she really wants to do it, she has to give herself about at least 2 years to get back to, maybe not where she was, but at least at the highest level. It's going to take time, and the pandemic hasn't really helped. So, it's been about, in the last 4 years, she has barely played about 20, 25 matches. That's just not enough. She needs to play at least about 30, 35, 40 matches a year. And because of the pandemic, that has really slowed it down. But her priorities are now today her son, her family, and her home. And I don't know how long she will be able to endure the kind of struggle it has been to even reach tournaments today in the kind of pandemic situation that we are dealing with. And, I actually feel that she has achieved everything that I had ever dreamed of. She wants to make a point that even as a mother, I can still achieve a lot. That's up to her. I don't know how strongly she feels about it. I don't know how strongly she feels her motherly instincts to be with her son constantly. And it's up to her. But I think I would give her, if she wanted to continue, she'll have to make a few adjustments, which I'm not sure she wants to make. If she doesn't, then probably it'll take another 6 months for her to get there. I don't know whether she wants to put in that kind of struggle. If she is willing to do that, I think she has a chance. Otherwise, it'll be a tough ride.
And of course, the goal will be to win more Grand Slams, isn't it? That's why you play. That's what you play for.
Absolutely. That even one Grand Slam, if she can win now, I think she would have made a very strong point that mothers can really achieve a lot in life, and that their life does not have to stop after motherhood.
Yes, absolutely. And that's a great message to send out. And it's good that actually tennis world is one where a lot of mothers are playing, and it's a sport from where this message comes out quite constantly, that you can be mothers and have a family and also play professional sport. And I always believe that golf and tennis are two of the toughest professional sports to play because they're individual games, and you have to travel all around the world. So both the
other thing I would like to add is that, while it's a big struggle for her trying to do what she wants to do, she's still the kind of support she needs from the rest of the family is actually increased, because there's the boy traveling with the child traveling with her, and then there's someone to take care, which means Anam travels with the boy child to take care, and then there's Asad also joining in the thing. And so, there's a lot of baggage. It's not going to be easy, I know. I can see that she's playing well. She has the talent and she's physically fit enough to do well. But with all these things happening, she will have to give herself complete freedom to do whatever it takes to achieve in professional tennis. If she can do that, I think she can still achieve that. But it's up to her.
Right. We're in the final 10 minutes. We'll try to take some comments from viewers as well. But finally, I also want to ask you, Imran, as a journalist and also somebody who loves sport, as someone who's co-authored this book and someone who talks to you very often about the state of Indian tennis and global tennis, one always wonders where we're going to get our next big star from. Do you think it's going to be difficult for India?
You mean a tennis player?
Yeah, from tennis.
Yeah. I think it's going to be a long, difficult road because, we have talent. It's not that we don't have talent, Shivani, but, along with talent, you need a lot of other things to fall into place. It needs, the proper guidance from the family, proper help, a total commitment from the support staff. It needs raising finances and using the finances in the right manner. And if you fail at any level, you're never going to make it. And knowing how critical it is, all these things, it's going to be very difficult. And we were lucky, I think, that all these things fell into place. We'll have to be very, very fortunate. And also, Sania had a kind of talent that was way beyond anything I have seen in India and beyond. Yeah, she had very special talent. And you needed that kind of talent to break out of the non-existent system that we have in India. And I think it's going to take a very long time before we have another player of the caliber of Leander Mahesh, Sania or Rohan. And I hope we do. We are all working towards it. We need to work hard, but I'm not very hopeful that it'll happen in the very near future. Yes. Having said all that, you've been asking me a lot of questions. I want to ask you one question as well.
Yeah. In the meantime, we can also have some comments. Yes, Imran, shoot.
Yeah. You. I know you love sport. I know you've been a journalist all your life. You've been a sports journalist, now a political journalist. So, if you had a son son or daughter, what would they be? Would they be a sports person? Would they be a journalist, or would they be a politician?
Well, if I had a choice, of course, I don't really feel I can decide it. But if I had a choice, I would absolutely want my child to be a sports person. Wow. Absolutely, number one. I would love it if they can be an athlete. You know me, Imran. You've known me for a very long time. I am a sports lover at heart. The only reason I got into media, in fact, at the age of 19 was because I loved sports. And that's how I started. Otherwise, I don't think I would have been even in the media. So it was my love for sports that brought me into the media, wanting to be close to sports. And I enjoy it. I may not cover it as much as I used to, but if my child could pick up sport, any sport, tennis, I love tennis. If it is tennis, then so be it. And I would love for you to maybe, I don't know when it's going to happen, but if you can coach my child.
You better make it fast. I'm getting on in years. It better be fast because I'm getting on in years. And the other question I want you to answer, there's another question I have for you.
Yeah.
If you were to write an autobiography of another person, who would that be? Would that be yourself?
God. I haven't picked one yet, I'll be honest. I'm still waiting for that trigger and for that light bulb to go in my head to say that, I would love to really go, write this person's story. I was very privileged, very lucky to be writing Sania's story. I would never, it's one of the great experiences of my life. But I haven't really picked the next one. I think you can't really pick and decide either. It was fate that brought me to work on this book. I think it will be fate that will possibly help me write another book if that's going to happen, and somebody else's autobiography. I'll be most privileged, but I haven't really thought about it.
Okay, fair enough. And I'm relieved to hear that you want your kid to be a sports person.
Absolutely. That's not even a question, Imran. No. I would love to have an athlete in the family, love to have my kids, if and when that happens, to play a sport, because I think, I'm a sports lover at heart, and for me, the real icons in life are athletes. So, and the joy that sports brings, and we've seen that play out. Like, I've been working non-stop for a month on the Olympics, and the joy that sports brings to a country and the power that it has, even in tough times, to bring everyone together, I think it's unmatched. Absolutely. So if one can contribute to that, I have already booked Imran to coach my child if the timing is right, and we'll certainly look forward to that.
Okay, let's take some questions.
Yeah, let's see if we have some questions. Otherwise, it has been a great chat.
Yeah, sure. Enjoyed it.
Not sure if... Let me just take this opportunity to thank Kalinga Literary Festival for hosting us and allowing us to talk about Sania's book. I think we have someone saying this is a very inspiring story for all girls in our country who want to dream and also achieve the dreams the way Sania has achieved. Thank you very much, Ashutosh, for commenting on that. I mean, and that's the aim, isn't it? That was the aim of the book as well, to be able to inspire more people in dreaming big. Salute to the spirit of Sania. She's a star for many in the country. And how do you see today's sports ecosystem? Imran, would you like to answer that?
Ecosystem, what do you mean by the ecosystem?
The sports ecosystem for young athletes, for example?
Well, I think the government today is taking special interest in trying to promote sport, and that is a very pleasant thing to see. But we still have a long way to go. You know, we are not going to be producing world-class athletes in a year or two. It's a long process, and I think it's only just begun. And I'm very pleased with the manner in which the government has encouraged sport. But like I said, we still have a long way to go.
Yeah, if we have to compete with the US, Australia, UK, Japan, China of the world, we obviously need a very different system. Of course, we have our own set of challenges. Those are, apart from the US, those are smaller countries with not as much population burden, not as much historical burden. But what do you feel is the key difference still? Let's say, for example,
I may be a little bit different in my thinking to a lot of people, but I feel that there are many sports that different sports are suitable for certain kind of physiques, which as Indians we may have, or some sports are more amenable to be tackled by, say, European physique, or by the badminton or table tennis is something where the Chinese have done really well. So I feel that we would do well if we could, focus on what we could be good at, rather than trying to do everything. Because there are certain things that I feel we are always going to be struggling at the international level if we are to play football. You know, we have a lot of passion for the sport, but we struggle to compete at the highest level. Yeah, something that the Chinese did in tennis was that, when they realized that the men could not be physically competing against the men tennis player, they decided to put all their finances into the women. And that's when the women tennis players emerged from the Chinese system. So we could think on those lines, where we are suited for particular sports. We put in the money and efforts in that direction, rather than competing in every sport that is played at the Olympics or in the world.
All right. I would like to take the opportunity to thank everyone. We've got another message which says that family bonding is a very important ingredient, and that absolutely is true. And I can vouch for the fact that I have seen it in person, and it's there in the book of how the family came together, and it's not possible without that. So thank you everyone for listening. It was a great pleasure, Imran, to be sitting down once again with you. And thank you to the Kalinga Lit Fest for hosting us.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Enjoyed it.
Thank you, guys.